We will be focusing on weekly challenge number 417 today. We're going to practice some of the tools, very famous common tools like join and join multiple and select tool with this activity. When we look at this challenge today, we have a data set given, which was just one column and it's messy. Our first task will be we're going to divide this one column using text to columns tool. We're going to organize it to 3 different columns. So the delimiter will be a comma, and we're going to create 3 columns. When we run this data now, it does create me an employee ID column, a shift date column, and shift duration column. Next, we're going to use the select tool. So I'm bringing a select tool, and I'm going to uncheck the first messy column. The first one, data type stays as string, but we're going to rename it as employee ID. The second one is the shift date, so I'm going to recognize it as a date. And then the third one, we're going to describe it as an integer 64, and we're going to call it as shift duration. And then when I run our workflow, now we have 3 columns of data. After this task, we are trying to find a table that we will display each employee's total shifts during this period. Okay, now some of the employees, they're starting on the very first day of January. Some of them, they're starting later. So we're gonna find the start date for each employee. So I'm gonna use the summarize tool. I will group by employee ID, and then I want to find the minimum shift date and maximum shift date for each employee. And then here we're going to see that some of them, they start on January 1st, some of them, they start on January 2nd, some of them on January 3rd. Same thing, some of their shift dates are also very different. I want to call this as min dates, and I want to call this as max date. And I am going to have to use the formula tool to create a new column called day count. So we want to calculate the day count as integer 64, and we want to subtract the maximum date from the minimum date. And then when we run this workflow, okay, now because these are described as dates, we can just subtract it like this. So we're going to have to use a function, date-time difference. And we want to subtract the maximum date from the minimum date. And then the date-time difference will be in terms of days. And now we know the day count for each employee, and the last one has only 59. Now, I don't need the minimum and maximum dates anymore, so I'm gonna proceed while I'm cleaning the data set. So I'm gonna get rid of these 2 columns. I only need the day count for each employee ID. Now, uh, now we need to figure out how many days actually each employee has worked during this time period. So we're gonna need another summarize tool here. We don't need to connect it from the original data set. We're going to proceed from our organized version. We want to group by employee ID, and we want to count how many days actually they worked. And then when I run this data, here I see how many days they worked. And I'm going to call this as working days. Okay. So at the top, we have the day count. Here we have the working days. Um, Connecting these two data sets will allow me to calculate a new column called non-working days. So I'm going to go ahead and join these two now. They do have a common employee ID column. I do not repeat the employee ID column second time. Total day count, working days. When I run this data set, now I know the day count for each employee and their working days. But if you look at the challenge, we're going to have to calculate non-working days, which is now pretty easy. We just need a formula tool in our join section, and then we're going to call this as non-working days. Since we described both of these as integers, it should be an easy subtraction. Working days minus day count. Okay, which will be the other way around. Day count minus working days. Run. Yeah, I do have the non-working days for each employee. Let's just check if these are matching. The one ends at 45, it's a 41. 45, it is a 70. 18 days and 70 days. Here, 18 days, 70 days, because this one has a 59. Is that the last time they took a, is there something going on here? Let's check. One was where I get the minimum and maximum. This one maximum is January 3rd, no, March 3rd, which is like 27 days shorter than the other people. So this seems more reasonable, 70 days. No, it's not. 1870, that's a 98. But if you look at here, forty-three, 43, 26. Working days are matching 18, 25, 62, 46, 46. Hmm. Okay, let's calculate non-working days again. So they count here. We're going to use a select tool here. I don't need the employee ID. I don't need day count. I don't need, I can keep the working days and non-working days here. After this, we can use the filter and then we will find out the duration is less than 4 hours. Okay, for this many work days, duration is less than 4 hours. If we use the summarize tool again, group by employee ID, and then we want to count how many they had below 4 hours. We're gonna call this as below 4 hours. Here we are gonna use filter one more time. And then this will be duration equals 4 hours. We will use the summarize tool. We want to group by employee ID, and we're going to count the duration. This will be exactly 4 hours. Okay, and then we want to do this one more time. Group by employee ID, and then we want to count this, and then we're going to call this as more than 4 hours. And we will also join these three data sets. So let's just use join multiple. Okay, input 2, input 3. All right, employee ID below 4 hours, exactly 4 hours, more than 4 hours. Now we're gonna bring a data cleansing tool, and we're just gonna replace the nulls with some zeros. It shows me why are these employee IDs are null. Okay. Um, just pick this. Okay. We can use a formula tool, and then we can say if is null employee ID, then we want you to use input to employee ID, else yeah, just use the original employee ID. And if when I do this, if null, and it is null, I'm just gonna use the 3. Yeah, and yeah, employee 3. I can use the select tool now, I do need this. How many below 4 hours? Exactly 4 hours, more than 4 hours. And we're going to join these two again. And then it'll be the employee ID. Run. Okay. Working days, non-working days, below 4 hours, exactly 4 hours, more than 4 hours. Okay. Now the next challenge is calculate the percentage of shifts that had fewer than 4 hours. All right, so we're gonna bring a formula tool because we're gonna calculate the percentage. And then below 4 hours. And then we will get how many below 4 hours they worked out of their working days. And then we're gonna multiply this by 100. And then we will call this as integer 64. Let's just run, see what happens. Yep, this shows the percent of their time that they are below 4 hours. Here's the thing though. But here they wanted for this employee 100%. And then this one was, how is this 44? 18 divided by 18 is 100. So it's below 4 hours. We made a mistake here, not non-working days, it will be working days. 100. Yes, okay. And then we're on the last part. Which employee should be considered for additional work hours? Okay. Bonus part, additional work hour. If percent is greater than 50, then we want to make them give them extra hours. Otherwise, prioritize others. And if, and then this will be the end of, okay. In their case, you can also make this greater than or equal to. This will be the end of challenge 417.